Chapter 32, Run. Don't let the moonlight shine on you. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Uchiha Gin, who clocked into work and came to the dungeon again, no longer felt the same discomfort as yesterday. The original owner seemed to be very compatible with this environment, arriving at his post smoothly. Uchiha Jin's head hurt a little when he saw the messy scene that was no different from yesterday, but Uchiha Luing had already said that he had no assistant, so he sighed and had no choice but to do it himself. The layout of the archives room is very simple. Bookshelves against the wall are spread throughout the space, and a desk is placed in the free space in the middle. Uchiha Jin first checks the bookshelves one by one to see if there are any signs. Cell number 1, file scroll color is green, crime level, high. Looking at the few lines of brief instructions written on the bookshelf, Uchiha Jin breathed a sigh of relief, which saved a lot of effort. Next, he found the bookshelves in cells number 2 and 3. The colors of the two files were blue and purple respectively, corresponding to the medium and low levels of crime. The color of the scroll I casually opened yesterday was blue. That Kagaya Jasuke turned out to be only a mid-level criminal. Then Uchiha Jin remembered that his file said a wandering ninja with mental problems. It can be inferred from this that the person who captured Kagaya Jasuke did not know that he was related to the tragedy in the Uchiha clan 6 years ago, just because the other party went crazy and attacked the Uchiha patrol, resulting in the death of 2 Uchiha tribesmen. Uchiha Jin, who had in-depth communication with Kagaya Jasuke, knew that the other party had already had mental problems. After he was arrested, he must have been tortured and couldn't find any inside information. Otherwise he wouldn't have been locked up in the more relaxed number 2 dungeon, and no one would be interrogated all year round. The clues from Kagaya Jasuke's side have been cut off. I don't know who captured him back then. Maybe we can find clues from the process of arresting him back then. Uchiha Jin thought to himself, and then picked up the information about Jasuke Kagaya that he had read yesterday from the desk. Kagaya Jasuke, a wandering ninja who massacred 2 Uchiha clan members. He is suspected of having mental problems and cannot use illusion torture. The information is unknown. He is currently being held in the number 2 dungeon. That I continued to scroll back and saw a note. The prisoner Kagaya Jasuke is captured by the Uchiha Ryukage team. It's him. The man with the terrifying aura who led him yesterday came to mind. Uchiha Luing was actually the person who captured Kagaya Jasuke 6 years ago, but this person looked like the kind of person who was difficult to get along with. Uchiha Jin, who frowned, was thinking about how to bring up this matter. At this moment, the door to the archives room was pushed open, said Chow Chow. Chow Chow was here, and the person who came was none other than Uchiha Luing with a haggard face and an air conditioning radiating from his body. With an expressionless face, he entered the room and saw Uchiha Jin holding a scroll in his hand and examining it carefully. He was also a little surprised that this notorious playboy was actually working seriously, but put the surprise aside for now. Today it was Elder Yen who asked him to come here to inquire about the situation of killing the prisoner yesterday. This kind of thing was originally his responsibility. Although the dungeon falls under Uchiha Yen's jurisdiction, he manages too many departments and cannot take care of them all. In this case, each department has an acting manager, and Uchiha Luing is the acting manager of the dungeon, and the entire dungeon is left to him to take care of. You killed a prisoner yesterday? Uchiha Luing asked with a slightly cold expression. No, I was in self-defense. Uchiha Jin shouted that he was wronged, and then explained. I just went to check the information. I didn't expect that guy to dare to attack me. Fortunately, the guy was in such bad condition that his bones and veins were all osteoporotic. He died of exhaustion after I fought back a few times. Corpse bone veins. Hearing the other party mentioning the bone veins, Uchiha Luing, who had no intention of asking anymore, frowned and thought for a moment and asked. What's that guy's name? Kagaya Jasuke. I don't know who caught him back then. How could such a cruel criminal be locked up in the number 2 dungeon? He's such a... Uchiha Jin deliberately mentioned the corpse veins, and then pretended to condemn the person who captured Kagaya Jasuke. I caught him. Uchiha Ryukage, who was stabbed in the spine by Uchiha Jin's unintentional words, admitted with an ugly expression. This is a very correct choice. The prisoners should be allowed to experience the humane management model of our Uchiha clan. Uchiha Gin looked at Uchiha Luiying, whose face was gradually turning dark, and quickly changed his words. This made the other party look a little better. Seeing that the timing was about the same, Uchiha Gin took the opportunity to ask his question. As expected of Commander Luiying, you can easily capture such a brutal criminal. I don't know how you captured this guy back then. After hearing this, Uchiha Luiying frowned, as if searching for this memory in his mind. Uchiha Gin saw that the other party was recalling, and immediately stopped disturbing him and waited quietly. After a few minutes, Uchiha, who had almost recalled everything, started to tell the whole story. 6 years ago, Uchiha Taijima, who had just taken over as clan leader, led all the young combatants to the front line in order to establish his prestige. Unexpectedly, the tribe suffered a huge change. The patriarch's mansion was razed to the ground, and there was only one survivor left on the scene. Uchiha Taijima felt regretful in his heart. Since then, he has increased the number of patrols and also increased the scope of patrols. Just 1 month after the tragedy occurred in the tribe, a patrol of Uchiha tribesmen encountered a strange enemy. At first, this person did not conflict with the patrol team. He just wandered around the Uchiha clan's territory in a daze. The patrol team members at that time just regarded him as an ordinary person wandering here. The two sides got along peacefully, until a more cautious Uchiha tribesman noticed that there seemed to be signs of chakra on the other side, and opened his Sharingan to cast an illusion on him. Unexpectedly, when the other party saw the Sharingan, it was as if a switch was turned on, and he started to fight against the patrol members. Under his powerful taijutsu attack, 2 weaker Uchiha tribesmen were punched through the chest and died on the spot. Seeing that they were defeated, the remaining people immediately contacted the clan, and the clan leader sent the then famous Uchiha Ryukage to capture the perpetrator. Was Kagaya Jasuke sane back then? Uchiha Gin couldn't help but interrupt Uchiha Luiying's narration, but the other party didn't care and continued. It was already midnight when Uchiha Luiying led the team to arrive. Based on the clues left by the patrol members who had been tracking the assailant, they pursued him and saw the assailant's true face. It was very embarrassing. Kagaya Jasuke was unkempt, his clothes were in tatters, and he was even more unsteady when he walked. When I first saw him, I wouldn't associate him with the murderer. I would just think that he was a murderer. Stupid bum. Uchiha Ryukage answered his question. No injuries on your body? Uchiha Gin asked again. Yes, his entire back looks like it has been burned by fire, with pus and blood flowing. Burning fire? A nervous breakdown. All this combined made Uchiha Gin feel a little dizzy, and he had a glimmer of inspiration, but he just couldn't catch it for the moment. How did you catch him in the end? Uchiha Gin wanted to know the whole process. Uchiha Luiying continued to talk. When the two sides met at that time, Uchiha Luiying first tested Kagaya Jasuke, but he did not expect that the other party was knocked down with one blow. Just when he was surprised, the team member who came to check opened the Sharingan midway, and Kagaya Jasuke, who had been knocked down, unexpectedly rose up again. Fortunately, the teammates who came with him were relatively strong. They only lost an arm, so their lives were safe for the time being. What followed was a fierce battle between the two sides, basically a competition of physical skills. The opponent was extremely fast and ordinary ninjutsu could not hit him. Kagaya Jasuke, who is mentally insane, is even more immune to illusions and can only use physical magic to consume him. They were evenly matched at first, but for some reason the opponent kept distracted and hid under the shadow of the trees during the battle, allowing him to find a flaw, and finally broke off his hands and feet to complete the capture. Hiding under the shadow of a tree, Uchiha Gin frowned, unable to figure out why. I didn't know why he did this during the battle, but after I caught him, I heard him muttering in a low voice. Uchiha Luiying recalled. What are you mumbling about? This sentence aroused Uchiha Jin's curiosity. Run! Don't let the moonlight shine. The cold voice of Uchiha Luiying rang in his ears. Chapter 33. What does the original owner's birth have to do with me, Uchiha Gin? You are listening at novelfull.audio. After Uchiha Luiying understood the situation, he left without saying too much. The confused Uchiha Gin couldn't piece together any useful truth based on these sparse clues. After weighing it, he decided to do the job at hand first, because I understood that the files were divided according to color, it was easier to sort them out, and I sorted the messy scrolls in a short time. Looking at the 3 piles of scrolls of different colors in front of him, Uchiha Jin began to classify the next step. The file scrolls must not only be divided according to dungeons, but also each prisoner's file must be clearly marked and catalogued for accurate reference. After thinking for a while, he decided to start with the cyan scroll. Shimura Shinji, the Shimura clan poisoned the water source of the Uchiha clan, causing the death of 23 Uchiha clan members. He is good at wind escape and poison. It's so despicable that it must be placed on the first level. Sarutobi Takinosuke, the Sarutobi clan secretly attacked the Uchiha clan's supply troops, killing 12 people and leaving 5 disabled for life. He is good at fire escape, earth escape, and psychic arts. It's too cruel, it must be the first level. A mountain and a field, a family in the mountains. After flipping through many cyan scrolls, Uchiha Jin found that most of these prisoners came from famous families in the future. It seems that even during the Warring States period, the growth of civilian ninjas was still difficult, and most of the best were family ninjas. There are not many blue scrolls, and those who can be caught in dungeon number 1 are criminals with serious crimes. This type of criminals are basically strong and cannot be easily captured, so there are only a dozen or so of them. The cyan scrolls were quickly sorted out. During this period, Uchiha Jin also checked the arrest records. Basically, they were all arrested 6 years ago, and there were no suspects. Scratching his curly hair, Uchiha Jin set his sights on the blue scroll and continued to sort it out, hoping that valuable clues would emerge. Unfortunately, even halfway through, no suspicious person was found. Most of the prisoners in the blue scroll are small clans or wandering ninjas who are not very strong. Most of their crimes were spying on intelligence or sneak attacks on lone Uchiha clan members. After looking around, it turned out that Kagaya Jusuke's crime was the heaviest in the blue scroll, but he was sent to the number 2 dungeon because of his mental problems and his inability to communicate effectively. There are many more scrolls in dungeon number 2 than in dungeon number 1. Uchiha Jin felt his eyes were sore and his head was swollen after reading most of them, just like the symptoms of not wanting to go to work in his previous life. Doing work requires a balance between work and rest. Uchiha Jin, who was so self-comforting, put down the work in his hands, closed his eyes and started fishing. Just when he was concentrating with his eyes closed, there was a careful knock on the door. "Please come in." Hearing someone knocking on the door, Uchiha Jin immediately opened his eyes, picked up a scroll and started working. Uchiha Rashi, whom he had met yesterday, pushed the door open and walked in. He carefully checked to see if there was anyone else in the room, and he breathed a sigh of relief when he found that there was only Uchiha Jin. Master Iin is so dedicated to his job, he is truly a role model for our generation. Seeing Uchiha Jin holding the scroll and reading it seriously, Uchiha Rashi immediately slapped him with a rainbow fart. "No matter where I am, I'm just doing my job." Uchiha Jin waved his hand modestly. "I wonder what brings Brother Lu Cha here. Master Iin is really a bad guy, just call me Lu Cha." "It's okay, Brother Lu Cha, I don't know if I have any advice." Seeing that there was no one around, Uchiha Rosha took a few steps forward and whispered to Uchiha Jin. "Master Iin, I have found out what you ordered." Yesterday, after accepting Uchiha Jin's mission, Uchiha Rachashi immediately took action and inquired in each of the 3 dungeons. Finally, Huang Tian paid off and asked him to get a piece of news from an older jailer. "Brother Lu Cha, please tell me." After hearing this, Uchiha Jin raised his eyebrows, thinking that this guy's work efficiency was pretty good, and he could find clues in just 1 day. According to an old jailer here, this dungeon was not laid out as it is now. As he spoke, Uchiha Rashi pointed to the dungeon map hanging on the wall, pointed to the location between dungeon number 1 and dungeon number 2, and continued. "There used to be 4 dungeons here, but just 6 years ago, Elder Yen abandoned one of them, leaving only the 3 dungeons now." Uchiha Rashi drew a circle in the large blank area vacated by dungeon number 1 and number 2, indicating that another dungeon once existed there. "Since it is abandoned, does it mean that it is no longer used?" Uchiha Jin asked after thinking according to common sense. I don't know, but the old jailer said that before the dungeon was abandoned 6 years ago, a person was secretly imprisoned. Uchiha Rashi said mysteriously. Since it's a secret, how did he know it? Although the news of secret detention is very tempting, does the old jailer know a little too much? Ah, I didn't ask that either. Uchiha Rashi was speechless for a moment by this escaping question. He really never thought about why the other party so easily told this secret news to himself who he had never met before. Could it be that he just revealed that he was a close aide of the new clan leader's nephew? Forget it, go on, what else did the old jailer tell you? The sudden appearance of this mysterious old jailer made him feel that something was wrong. The timing of his appearance must have been too good. He told me that after that person was locked up, he never came out again. Not long after that, Elder Yen announced that the dungeon was abandoned due to disrepair. Uchiha Lucha swallowed his saliva to relieve his dry throat. Who are those imprisoned? That the people who were arrested 6 years ago, were they the ones who attacked the Uchiha clan? I asked the old jailer, and he never talked to me again after he said what he said before. Uchiha Lucha said a little embarrassed. Where is the old jailer now? It's hard to get some clues, and Uchiha-in doesn't want to give up. He is in dungeon number 3, and he is doing cleaning work for his personal reasons. Uchiha Lucha is a little embarrassed to speak. What? The old jailer is blind. Uchiha Lucha's guilty eyes evaded. The person who knows these things is actually a blind person, so the accuracy of this news is questionable. No wonder Uchiha Lucha was able to find the news so quickly. It turned out that he didn't even let the blind man go. Thank you, Brother Lucha. If you have any more news, please tell me as soon as possible. Knowing that the source of the news was actually from an old blind man, it seems that this news is mostly fabricated. After all, how could a low-ranking jailer know about such a secret matter as secret escort? I dare not. I am honored to serve Lord Een. Uchiha Lucha looked terrified, frowning. Uchiha-in recalled the memory of the original owner. From his memory, although the original owner had a strange temper, he sometimes relied on the identity of the clan leader's nephew to oppress and provoke his clansmen. However, the original owner did not have any extreme behavior towards the clansmen who had no ill will towards him. But why were ordinary clansmen so afraid of him? Brother Lucha, how do the clansmen usually see me? Uchiha-in asked. Uchiha Lucha, who was asked a life-threatening question, had a wandering look in his eyes, and he didn't know what to say when the words came to his lips. Although the 2 days of getting along made him feel that the Uchiha Gin across from him was not as bad as the rumor said, he could not guarantee that the other party was fishing for law enforcement. Brother Lucha, with our current relationship, you can speak freely without worrying about it. Uchiha Jin showed a friendly smile and patted Uchiha Lucha's shoulder, indicating that he was now his own man and did not need to worry about anything. Then I'll say it. As if he had made up his mind, Uchiha Lucha gritted his teeth, raised his head and revealed a look of fearlessness in his eyes. After brewing the words for a while, Uchiha Lucha squeezed out a sentence. As far as I know, Uchiha Jin is a pure-born. Chapter 34, Being Too Straightforward Leads to Genocide. You are listening at novelfull.audio. For the next hour, Uchiha Rashi kept detailing the various crimes of Uchiha Jin. Small things include not paying for meals, spying on widows taking a bath, and snatching snacks from children. He was so old that he dragged the girl who was walking at night into the woods in the middle of the night, did some exercises in front of her boyfriend, and then killed them both. The other party's parents complained to the tribe and were detained by him. In the end, they were sent to the family for a reunion. After the incident, they even boasted that the whole family must be in order. There are countless similar cases. Uchiha Jin's crimes were passed down by the tribe's mouth, and later even reached the point where everyone knew it. Ordinary tribesmen fear him like a tiger, and their expressions change when they talk about him. The powerful tribesmen hate him to the core. If it were not for his identity, he would have done justice to heaven and eliminated harm to the people. How come these crimes never appeared in the memory of the original owner? The original owner had a relatively withdrawn personality, especially after experiencing the tragedy, and rarely interacted with his clan members. Daily life is handled by oneself. The few provocations were caused by the other party mentioning the topic of survivors of the tragedy. and the original owner only started conflicts with the other party. There is no brother in the world, but there are legends of brothers everywhere in the world. Did you see all this with your own eyes? Uchiha Gin couldn't help but interrupt Uchiha Rashi, who was still counting his crimes in detail. Well, not really. After stopping to think for a moment, Uchiha Rashi scratched the back of his head and said uncertainly. Then why does it sound like it's true? I don't know who said it first, and then everyone seemed to start saying, Uchiha Gin, you have done these things. Uchiha Rashi, who was also a little confused himself, suddenly had some self-doubt. When exactly did he set up such a character for Uchiha Gin in his mind? People believe things that they have never done, but they believe it to be true. Is someone deliberately spreading it, or is it? Uchiha Gin suddenly had many doubts about what happened to the original owner, and why he was charged with unfounded charges. Who is the culprit who ruined the original owner's reputation and caused him to be isolated, and why did he do this? These questions lingered in Uchiha Jin's mind, making him a little uneasy. Why should he target the weakling of the original owner? Is it just a grudge that he is the only survivor? Survivor guilty theory. This famous theory flashed through Uchiha Jin's mind. The theory of survivor guilt refers to the theory that survivors who survive a disaster or crime will face more severe criticism from the public and bear huge pressure from social moral accusations. The reason why the original owner became withdrawn and turned a blind eye to these unfounded rumors may be the so-called survivor bias. The original owner who survived that tragic disaster often felt a sense of guilt for his tribe. This emotion prompted him to choose silence when faced with many rumors that were not good for him, but silence equals admission. Since then, the character of the original owner has been established among all the tribesmen who do not know the truth. At this time, the rumors are confused with reality, making it difficult for people to distinguish between true and false, and they can only follow what others say. Master Een, that's all I know. Uchiha Jin, who was deep in thought, didn't really listen to the second half of Uchiha Rashi's narrative, but he also knew that the general content should still be various negative news about the original owner. Okay, thank you, Brother Lu Cha. I like to hear the truth. Walking and standing upright, since Uchiha Jin knew that the original owner had not done any of these outrageous things, he naturally would not have any grudges against Uchiha Rashi's words. Then I'll get busy first. Uchiha Rashi's mouth went dry as he spoke, and he was ready to run away before the other party got angry. Well, let's have tea together when we have time. Uchiha Jin, whose mind was no longer here, nodded and motioned for the other party to get busy. After going out, Uchiha Rashi leaned against the wall, almost unsteady, and felt like he was soaked all over. I said so much, but he didn't even get angry. It's nothing like the legend. He shook his head. These things were not something that a little jailer like him should consider. Today, Uchiha Taidan went to submit a job transfer application. Now he has to go back and rest, and he has to keep vigil alone at night, putting aside the grievances of the original owner for the time being. Uchiha Jin decided to meet the so-called old jailer first to see if he could get more accurate information from him. Dungeon number 3 is where petty theft criminals are imprisoned. The short term is 10.5 months, the long term is basically about a year before being released. Some are members of the Uchiha clan, and some are wandering ninjas. The common characteristics of these people are that they are not strong and courageous. The guards of Dungeon number 3 were 2 younger Uchiha tribesmen, probably in their early 10 years, with a seriousness that did not suit their age on their young faces, which seemed very inconsistent. Seeing Uchiha Jin approaching, one of the thin young men said, "The prison is a very important place and no idlers are allowed to enter." "You don't know who I am?" Seeing that the boy didn't seem to recognize him, Uchiha Jin couldn't help but ask. "No matter who you are not allowed to take a step forward without the command of the commander." The young man had a businesslike expression and stood guard in front of the door to prevent Uchiha Jin from approaching. The commander he mentioned was the former Uchiha Lukage. As the acting manager, he should be regarded as the uncrowned king of this dungeon. "I am the newly appointed archives officer, and I am going to dungeon number 3 to verify the prisoner's information." Uchiha Jin didn't want to get into more entanglements with the other party, so he directly pointed out his identity. "Since you are the archivist, you can go in." When the boy learned that Uchiha Jin was the archivist who came to verify information, he immediately moved out of the way. Idiot Fire Core, how can you trust strangers so easily? Another young boy, Uchiha, saw that his companion easily let a stranger in and hurriedly stopped him. But he said he was the archivist. That the boy named Uchiha Fire Core rubbed his head in confusion and said to his teammates with a troubled look on his face. I, Uchiha Jiro, will not be easily deceived by a guy like you. That the other Uchiha boy had a simple and honest face, and his clear eyes revealed a familiar stupidity. Your name is Uchiha Jiro. Is your brother Uchiha Dairo? Seeing the boy look more and more familiar, Uchiha Gin said. How do you know? That the other party actually mentioned his brother whom he had not seen for a long time, Uchiha Jiro asked subconsciously. I am a teammate who went on a mission with your brother. I just came back a few days ago. Uchiha Jin used the wisdom of the world to see how this kid would resist. Oh, I told you that you are my brother's friend, please come in. That the Uchiha cubs are still much more upright, no wonder they were tricked and exterminated. Then thank you, Brother Erlang. Seeing that his plan had succeeded, Uchiha Jin thanked Uchiha Jiro who was still giggling with a smile, and said to the sulking thin boy beside him. Thank you too, Brother Fire Core, right? That he was so angry that he turned his head in confusion. How do you know my name? Saying goodbye to the two Uchiha boys, he walked deeper into the cell. Dungeon number 3 obviously has more prisoners than the other two dungeons, but most of the people there have indifferent expressions, and some are even chatting and bragging. It seems that the punishment for the crime he committed was not serious, so he did not have a strong resistance mentality, which resulted in his heart steel treasure box not being triggered. After searching all the way, he found nothing, which almost made Uchiha Jin wonder whether Uchiha Lucha had made up an old jailer to fool him. Thinking of this, he suddenly saw an open cell. When I got closer, I saw a hunched figure cleaning the floor of the cell with a mop. Seeing that this figure was wearing a high-collar combat uniform common to the Uchiha clan, Uchiha Jin said hello. Hello, may I ask? Just as he was speaking halfway, the rickety figure turned around. Under the dim light of the corridor, an old face appeared in front of Uchiha Jin. The old man's face was covered with wrinkles, as if time had left clear traces on his face. The most impressive thing is that the pupils of both of his eyes are gray-white, and the hand holding the mop is like a dry chicken claw, without any blood. Uchiha Jin, who was suddenly startled by the other person's image, swallowed half of what he said. I saw a trace of black energy flashing in the old man's gray eyes, and a hoarse and weird laughter like a crow came from the dry mouth. What he said made Uchiha Jin's heart tighten even more. Hey, you're finally here. Chapter 35 The Strange Old Jailer, A Battle Without a Physical Body. You are listening at novelfull.audio. It is detected that the host is in a battle, and the heart steel treasure box begins to accumulate. The sudden system prompt interrupted Uchiha Jin's thoughts. He didn't have time to think too much. His eyes quickly switched to Sharingan, and he looked at the weird old jailer in front of him vigilantly. I have no ill intentions, I just want to. The old jailer opened his mouth, and a creepy smile pulled the corners of his mouth to his ears. Look at your growth. After that, the figure of the old jailer disappeared in front of him like smoke. Uchiha Jin immediately mobilized the super dynamic vision of Sharingan to search up and down and left and right for the disappeared old jailer, but there was no dead corner in the small cell. The other party seemed to have evaporated from the world, and no trace could be found. Where are you looking? The hoarse voice of the old jailer sounded in the ears of the nervous Uchiha Jin, and the cold breath invaded his back behind him. The words of the old jailer were like the gaze of the god of death, making his limbs stiff as if filled with lead. Gritting his teeth, he applied his strange strength to his elbow, and hit the old man behind him with a strong elbow strike with the power of thunder. Uchiha Ine felt his back loosen, and his elbow strike missed as expected. The old jailer disappeared again, and the candlelight on the wall flickered slightly. Uchiha Ine could only see his reflection on the wall. The appearance of the old jailer seemed like a dream, special concealment skills, or illusion. Guesses popped up in Uchiha Yin's mind one by one. He took a deep breath and reached for the flying thunder god kunai hanging on his waist. At the moment he touched the kunai, something strange happened. The old jailer actually stood upright on his shadow, staring at him with white pupils, and the corner of his mouth was still that slightly crazy smile. The sudden scene made Uchiha Jin's heart jump, and he subconsciously let go of the hand holding the kunai. At the moment of letting go of the kunai, the strange old jailer disappeared from his sight as if erased by an eraser. Surprised, he tried to hold the kunai in his hand again, and the figure of the old jailer appeared again, and then let go, and the old jailer disappeared. He recalled the introduction of this Flying Thunder God kunai. Flying Thunder God kunai. The weapon used by Namikaze Minato contains a trace of time and space power. Note, wearing it can accelerate the comprehension of time and space ninjutsu, the power of time and space. Is the method of the old jailer in front of him related to the power of time and space? As one of the most mysterious power systems in the Naruto world, the introduction of the power of time and space in the original work is only a few words, but the abilities related to it are more buggy than one another. The Flying Thunder God technique of the second and fourth Hokage, the Kamui of Uchiha Obito, the Sky Hand power used by Sasuke who opened the 6 paths of Samsara Eye, and the Ain no Manaka of Kagaya Otsutsuki, etc., each of them is a heavyweight skill, speculations aside. Uchiha Jin pretended to be flustered, his eyes darting around, but he secretly accumulated strength while holding the Flying Thunder God kunai. While the old jailer was still motionless, he stabbed his head with a kunai at lightning speed. For the first time, a stunned expression appeared on the old jailer's weird face, and he saw that the kunai was about to pierce his face. However, the old jailer quickly drooped and dived into Uchiha Jin's shadow in his unbelievable eyes. It's over, there is something dirty. For the first time, Uchiha Jin doubted whether he had traveled to the real Naruto world. He had never heard of the weird methods of the old jailer. You can actually see me? When did you have this talent? That the old jailer's head stretched out from Uchiha Jin's shadow, his gray eyes stared at him empty, and he slowly asked. You seem to know me very well. Uchiha Jin did not answer the old jailer's question, but turned to question him. He. The old jailer did not answer, but just laughed his signature weird laugh again. You deliberately revealed the news to Uchiha Lucha, just to arouse my interest and lead me here. Uchiha Jin changed the question, then the news you told him. It's true. Hearing Uchiha Jin's question, the old jailer stopped laughing and said in a hoarse voice. Then what is your purpose in leading me here? Uchiha Jin frowned and changed the question. Without waiting for the answer he wanted, the old jailer suddenly grabbed Uchiha Jin's legs, and a huge attraction dragged him uncontrollably into his own shadow. Uchiha Jin, whose legs were clamped, was shocked and stabbed the opponent's hands with the Flying Thunder God kunai, but a strange scene appeared. The sharp kunai actually passed through his withered hands without any resistance. Missed. The feeling of not stabbing a solid object made Uchiha Jin's heart sink. This guy is actually immune to physical attacks. He. Seeing Uchiha Jin's missed attack, the old jailer laughed again. If you are only this level. Drowned in your own shadow. Feeling the pulling of his legs more intense, Uchiha Jin couldn't help but feel a little desperate. Was he going to die here? At this moment, a breeze blew from somewhere in the empty dungeon. It was so small that it was almost imperceptible, but the candlelight on the wall was shaken by the wind, and the swaying flames instantly disturbed Uchiha Jin's reflection. Seeing his shadow flickering, Uchiha Jin felt the pull on his legs disappear for a moment. Could it be? Turning his head suddenly to look at the candles on the wall, a bold guess appeared in Uchiha Jin's mind. I saw him gathering strength with one hand, waving his hand and sending out a blast of punches, attacking the candle on the wall. The strong wind instantly extinguished the only lighting in the cell, and he was suddenly plunged into darkness. At the same time, Uchiha Jin felt his legs loosen, and the attraction he had just felt disappeared without a trace. He, you actually saw through this technique of mine. The figure of the old jailer emerged from the dark corner. At this time, there was no candlelight in the cell, and only the dim light from the narrow window of the cell allowed people to see each other clearly. Thank you, Senior, for showing mercy. Uchiha Jin stared at the old jailer, and his frown relaxed. The old jailer was a little stunned when he heard this. Senior, you are not an entity. Uchiha Jin opened his mouth and said, but the old jailer was silent. After a while, he couldn't hide his doubts in his gray pupils. How do you know? That this sentence was tantamount to a disguised admission. Uchiha Gin didn't show off, pointing to the ground in front of the old jailer. The dim light outside the window shone, but the place where there should have been a reflection was now empty. There is no shadow of the old jailer. You never made any real attack on me from the beginning. Even when you stretched out your hands to grab my legs, I just felt an attraction rather than a feeling of being dragged. Uchiha Gin expressed his analysis. Yes, it is indeed mine. The old jailer hesitated mid-sentence, looked at him with strange eyes, and continued. Now that you have seen through it, I will tell you all the problems that arise next. The host wins and gets anima point *1. After another battle, the Heart Steel treasure box reward can be unlocked. Current total anima, 23, The losing streak was broken. Uchiha Gin exclaimed in his heart that it was a pity that before he could start the show, the other party actually gave in first, which also broke the losing streak he had worked so hard to save. Although it was a pity, if he could get useful clues from the old jailer, his efforts would not be in vain. Senior, what is your purpose of bringing me here? That after sorting out his thoughts, Uchiha Gin wanted to know first what the purpose of the other party's news was to induce him to come. Don't you want to know who that man was in prison 6 years ago? That the old jailer asked strangely. That's the next question. Uchiha Gin shook his head, saying that now he just wanted to know the other party's purpose and why it was him. The old jailer's eyes dimmed again, he lowered his head and fell into silence. Seeing that the old jailer was silent, Uchiha Gin raised his feet to leave. At this time, the familiar hoarse voice of the old jailer came, and there was an inexplicable wave in the originally calm tone of an ancient well. I just want to see you. Chapter 36. What you see may not be true, but I am really not me. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Looking at the strange old jailer across from him with a horrified look on his face, Uchiha Gin subconsciously took a few steps back to distance himself from him. He just wanted information, but the other party actually wanted his body. Bah, old glass. Even though he was secretly complaining, he couldn't show it for the sake of the information from 6 years ago. He could only bite the bullet and say, "Thank you for your support, senior. Let's move on to the next question. Who was that guy in jail 6 years ago?" Uchiha Gin asked a question that he was eager to know the answer to. That's what they call it. The old jailer replied leisurely, traitor. Traitor. Hearing this term, Uchiha Gin frowned again. What happened 6 years ago? There was actually a traitor. Who is the traitor? Uchiha Gin asked, with some speculation in his heart. As you thought, he is a member of the Uchiha clan. The old jailer's tone was a little heavy. Then this has nothing to do with the attack on our clan 6 years ago, right? Uchiha Gin is a bit big-headed, and the person he captured turned out to be a traitor to the Uchiha clan. According to his understanding, the Uchiha clan actually has internal conflicts all year round. The reason is that the people of the Uchiha clan are inherently very emotionally sensitive and have great obsessions with people and things, so internal fights often break out due to disagreements. An attack on the tribe? Haha. The old jailer heard Uchiha Gin talking to himself and laughed strangely. What do you mean? Feeling that there was something in the old jailer's words, Uchiha Gin couldn't help but ask. It's laughable that they whitewashed that incident into an attack. After sneering, the old jailer made a surprising statement. What on earth do you know? Uchiha Gin was shocked in his heart. Originally he just wanted to trace the identity of the person who was imprisoned 6 years ago, but unexpectedly a more secretive incident was revealed. After a while, Uchiha Gin covered his swollen head and said. But I was the only survivor of that attack. I saw with my own eyes the massacre of our old, weak, women and children by the Kagaya clan. The painful memories that had been sealed were revealed again. The intense stimulation gave him a splitting headache and his eyes were stained with blood red, like a man-eating beast. How can you be sure that what you saw is true? The old jailer looked at Uchiha Gin, who was holding his head and panting, and sighed slightly. How do you know that you are really yourself? The old jailer's words were like thunder on the ground, exploding in his mind with a bang. Uchiha Gin felt as if someone had opened his skull and stirred it wildly with a stick. His eyes were stunned, and his eyeballs seemed to be about to burst in the next second. If viewed from a third perspective, the two Magatama in Uchiha Jin's left eye that had never moved even an inch were spinning rapidly. In the process, the third Magatama slowly rotated. Emerge. Ha! The severe pain caused Uchiha Jin to scream loudly, and the miserable sound alerted the guards at the door. Uchiha Fire Corps and Uchiha Jiro rushed to the scene as soon as they heard the news. They found that lying in the cell was Uchiha Jin, who had just communicated with them. At this time, he was covered in cold sweat, his face was pale, and his eyes were closed tightly. The two men immediately rescued him. However, they couldn't wake each other up after using various means. Knowing that they had no choice, the two men immediately picked up Uchiha Jin and ran to the medical center in the clan. Uchiha Jin, who fell into a coma, dreamed of a strange scene again. In an unfamiliar ward, a girl was sitting on her knees in a corner, and an older boy was also sitting in another corner. The scene changed, and in the ruins, the girl put her head on the boy's chest, crying and saying something. At this time, the boy's eyes were already filled with blood. In the last scene, the boy raised his head, and a bewitching red moon hung in the sky. At the medical point of the Uchiha clan, Uchiha Jin was lying on a hospital bed with two teenagers sitting next to him. Uchiha Izuna looked nervously at Uchiha Jin, whose expression was changing, and turned to ask the boy next to him. "Brother, does my cousin know how to do it?" Uchiha Madara's face darkened when he was asked, and he slapped Uchiha Izuna on the head, who was speaking incoherently. "What are you talking about? Didn't you hear Elder Miao say that this guy is as strong as an ox? His fainting may be an old injury from the last mission." Uchiha Miao, who had just gone out, told them that Uchiha Jin was in a coma due to the recurrence of an old injury. The mission records of Uchiha Fenghua and others clearly mentioned that Uchiha Jin was attacked by the Senju clan and suffered a head injury. Outside the door, Uchiha Taijima, whom he had not seen for a long time, was talking to the chubby Uchiha Yen. The frowning patriarch Uchiha Taijima said coldly, "Elder Yen, what happened to Iin in the dungeon?" Uchiha Yen was sweating profusely at this time. He really didn't know how Uchiha Jin fainted in the cell. He had obviously gone to express condolences to him yesterday, and Uchiha Jin was in extremely good condition at that time. When the two of them saw Uchiha Miao coming out, they both looked at him. Uchiha Jin's eye power has increased again. Uchiha Miao said in disbelief. Also, I checked that the seal is somewhat loose. After hearing this, the two people looked at each other with solemnity in their eyes. Impossible, absolutely impossible. Not to mention the seal, the eyes he has now were taken from those corpses by me. It is absolutely impossible to open the Sharingan. Uchiha Yen said with determination. What's going on with the seal? Compared to Uchiha Yen, who is obsessed with the Sharingan, Uchiha Taijima is more concerned about the seal. That seal was imposed by him himself, and his eyes have only recovered now. The sequelae left by overuse back then were too serious. I can only detect that there is power in slight contact with the seal, and it is slowly eating away at it. Uchiha Miao shook his head expressionlessly, indicating that he had no clue now. You must find out for me the secret hidden in Uchiha Jin. Uchiha Taijima said with narrowed eyes. Isn't it necessary? Uchiha Yen, wiping his sweat, said in confusion. He who has lost his eyes is no longer worth our time. Our top priority now should be to find out the whereabouts of that weapon. Hearing Uchiha Yen mention the word weapon, a trace of fear flashed in the eyes of several people present. How is the interrogation of the Sarutobi clan locked up in the dungeon? Uchiha Taijima asked. There will be results soon. Luying takes action himself. Even the immortal of 6 paths cannot resist his methods. Uchiha Yen confidently assured Uchiha Taijima. Don't let me down again, Elder Yen. A trace of scarlet flashed across Uchiha Taijima's eyes, and the cold eyes made Uchiha Yen feel cold all over his body, and the pressure emanating from his body made him breathless. Elder Miao, you should study the information left by that person as soon as possible. When the weapon is released, you will still need shackles, otherwise his eyes were even colder, and in his slightly narrowed eyes, there were no longer the familiar 3 Magatama, but a peculiar 4-cornered shuriken-shaped pupil. Weapons will backfire on their masters. The strange pattern disappeared in an instant, and Uchiha Yen and Uchiha Miao did not dare to show their anger at this time. "Father, Cousin Silver is awake," the tense atmosphere disappeared as Uchiha Izuna opened the ward door furiously. "Elder Yen, Elder Miao, you go and do your work first. I'll go see how Iin is doing." Uchiha Taijima, who put on a warm face, smiled and said to the two elders. Okay. The two elders left quickly as if they had received amnesty. "Izuna, let's go." With that said, Uchiha Taijima pushed the door open and saw Uchiha Jin standing up on the hospital bed, and was about to ask. Uchiha Jin, who had a weird look on his face, was the first to speak, but he kept saying nothing surprising. "Cousin, Uchiha Madara, this boy Tai Nantong, this is a disease and it needs to be cured." Chapter 37 Malice from the Cousin. You are listening at novelfull.audio. How can you taint someone's innocence out of thin air? After hearing this, Uchiha Madara turned pale and yelled at Uchiha Jin. If he had known better, he would not have revealed his true feelings to this unreliable cousin. "Sorry, I thought you were old enough to give me some constructive suggestions, but I didn't expect you to be a superficial person. I, Madara, am ashamed to be in your company." After that, he fluttered his sleeves and rushed out of the door like the wind. "Oh, don't leave. Let me give you some advice, or you'll be trapped under me for the rest of your life." Uchiha Jin made a trumpet shape with his hands and shouted loudly at Uchiha Madara's back, causing passers-by in the corridor to look sideways and start whispering. Uchiha Madara wished he had two more legs and quickly escaped from this place of right and wrong. Quan Nai at the door saw his eldest brother running away in embarrassment. He immediately put down the medicine he had just received and chased after him, putting on a youthful chase drama. A confused Uchiha Taijima looked at his two sons running away one after another, turned his head and asked with confusion. "Ah Iin, why are you teasing Ban again?" "Hee, it's nothing. Just go back and ask Quan Nai. He said he would report this to you personally." Uchiha Jin narrowed his eyes and smiled. "It's so rude. I will educate this child well when I go back." Uchiha Taijima shook his head, as if he was sorry for Uchiha Madara's behavior. "Cousin, you really treat me like an outsider when you say that." In private, without outsiders present, Uchiha Taijima would ask Uchiha Jin to call him uncle instead of clan leader. "Ah Iin, it was my mistake. Just after you came back from the mission, I asked you to go to work and didn't give you any time to rest." Uchiha Taijima looked at himself with a guilty look on his face. "You are out of touch when you say that. It is all my fault that I was not good at learning and was injured by the Thousand Hands clan." When Uchiha Jin woke up just now, he heard the conversation between Madara and Izuna. His coma was defined by Uchiha Miao as being caused by an old injury from the previous mission. He didn't want to expose his behavior, so he naturally took advantage of the situation. You need to take good care of your head injuries so as not to leave any sequelae. Uchiha Taijima patted Uchiha Jin on the shoulder, acting like a kind elder, but from the other party's eyes, Uchiha Jin could vaguely detect a flicker of scrutiny. "Ah Iin, you haven't finished the last mission report yet. What happened after you encountered the Uzumaki clan? Did you meet anyone suspicious?" After expressing condolences to Uchiha Jin, Uchiha Taijima seemingly casually mentioned the last mission. Thinking about it carefully, "The last time I gave a report, I was forcibly interrupted because I exposed my Sharingan, and I didn't make up for it afterwards. After we encountered the Whirlpool clan, due to the disparity in numbers and strength, we were soon unable to resist." Uchiha Jin, who was thinking for a while, then spoke. The muscular man who was the leader of the other party beat the fire-sealing captain back and forth. "Fortunately, I caught a young Uzumaki tribesman in the forest." Recalling Uzumaki Mito's cute round head, Uchiha Jin continued with a smile. "The identity of the child from the Uzumaki clan seems to be quite important. I used her as a threat to lure the muscular man away, and finally reached a deal with the other party. I let the child go, and he let us live." After listening to Uchiha Jin's half-truth and half-false story, Uchiha Taijima nodded. "He is calm in the face of danger. He is worthy of being my nephew. It all depends on my cousin's usual cultivation. Uchiha Gin complimented. Have you ever encountered any strange people or things? Uchiha Taijima asked again without giving up. Well, what you said reminds me that when the child from the Uzumaki clan was captured by me, he took out a ninja tool to resist. Uchiha Gin hammered his hand, as if he remembered something. What ninja tool? Uchiha Taijima became interested. It's just a pearl. There's nothing special about it. After the opponent cast it, there was only one rune hitting me, but there was no special reaction after it was hit. Maybe it was broken. Uchiha Gin shrugged, indicating that he didn't feel any discomfort. Where were you hit? Here. Uchiha Gin pointed to his head. That's it, then you should have a good rest and don't go to work recently. Uchiha Taijima frowned slightly at first, then stood up and said to Uchiha Gin. I'm fine. I can go to work as usual tomorrow. Uchiha Gin got off the bed and performed several difficult moves for Uchiha Taijima to prove that he was fine. Okay, don't force yourself. Unable to resist, Uchiha Taijima had no choice but to nod in agreement. Uchiha Gin watched his cousin leave with a smile. When the other party walked away, the rippling smile on Uchiha Jin's face subsided. This Uchiha Taijima was hiding something from him. During the exchange between the two just now, Uchiha Gin somehow felt a sense in his heart. That sense told him that Uchiha Taijima had extremely hidden malice towards him. Is it an illusion? Uchiha Gin thought to himself, but once this feeling takes root, it cannot be easily removed. After a while, Uchiha Gin, who had packed up, said goodbye to the hospital bed. Seeing that it was getting late, it was time for him to go home. I bought a lot of vegetables when I passed by the market. If he didn't come back one day, I could keep that brat Senju Atama busy for a few days. After choosing several shelf-stable ingredients, and when he was about to pay the vendor, he actually felt a sense of malice from the vendor in front of him. This feeling came so suddenly that he was confused for a moment. In the end, he chose to throw the money to the evasive vendor in front of him. Carrying the things, he walked back with his head lowered, still silently wondering whether the feeling just now was an illusion or something else. Pushing open the door, there was no surprise attack on his Senju Atama this time. The originally messy room was actually tidied up and looked brand new. Hearing the sound of the door opening, the black-haired version of Senju Atama wearing an apron stuck his head out of the kitchen and looked up and down at Uchiha Gin, who looked calm. Why is it so early today? What are you doing, little brat? I tried to use the induction just now on Senju Banma and found that there was no malicious feedback. I just made mine. If you want to eat it, you can make it yourself. Only then did Uchiha Gin realize that the kid actually had a spatula in his hand. Hey, you, the eldest son of the Senju family, can actually cook. Uchiha Gin squeezed in curiously, and saw an indescribable mass of matter in the pot. Hey, what are you cooking? Who are you looking down on? Try it, it's absolutely delicious. Hearing the doubt in the other party's tone, Senju Atama immediately scooped out a plate of mosaic material from the pot and handed it to Uchiha Gin. Forget it, I can't bear it. I'm afraid I'll eat the Uchiha milk that can see me. Point 10 moved but refused. Uchiha Gin still wanted to live a few more years. Don't beg me to give you a bite later. Senju Atama was so confident that she picked up a handful and stuffed it into her mouth. A few seconds later. I beg you not to die. Senju Atama was shaking with foam at the mouth, and Uchiha Gin felt extremely regretful. If he had known that he had finished showing off everything in the pot just now, he would have had diarrhea a few times at most. This kid really dared to die. Fortunately, there was no danger in the end. Senju Banjian was shaken by him until he vomited wildly. He vomited everything he had just eaten, and then he saved his life. Looking at the extremely weak kid in front of him, Uchiha Gin felt scared. Now this kid's life was tied to his own. If something happened to him, he would have to take his own life as well. Picking up this little kid, his thin body was very light, and he was as soft as a bone. Looking at the sleeping face of this little kid, Uchiha Gin found that this little kid didn't look very unpleasant, and his small round face was a little bit. Little cutie, he shook his head to dispel the strange thoughts in his mind. He was not Uchiha Madara, so how could he have any thoughts about the men of the Senju clan? Chapter 38, It is never too late for a gentleman to take revenge after 61 years. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Carrying the kid into the bedroom, Uchiha Gin took off his apron and coat. The kid was not wearing any underwear, but he was wearing underwear. He couldn't help but take a glance at him. The kid was really pink and tender. He didn't look at him anymore. He was afraid that his Sharingan would have sty. He covered the kid with a quilt and left. He went outside to deal with the masterpiece of Senju Banma first. It was impossible to eat it. The trash can was the best place for it. After a simple cleanup, Uchiha Gin came to the backyard. The sun had not yet set. He wanted to try to refresh the skills during the day. He sat cross-legged like before, closed his eyes and waited. After a while, as the surrounding aura condensed, Uchiha Gin opened his eyes, and a glimmer of understanding flashed in his eyes. It seems that the refresh of skills is not fixed at a fixed time. Even during the day, as long as he appears in the backyard, there is a chance to refresh the skills. The familiar old friend appeared again. Looking at the man who appeared in front of him without any warning, Uchiha Gin sighed. With only 2 Magatama, he was directly defeated by ninjas like Uchiha Itachi, but we can't do nothing, right? The NPCs that the system spawns should have no emotional memories and can only fight. If I live to see you born, I will definitely flick your little bird 10,000 times. Thinking of Uchiha Itachi, who will be born in a few years, he secretly swore in his heart that by then, no matter if your father is the clan leader or your brother is the savior, he will kill Kun directly. Come on, let the storm come more violently. Uchiha Gin, who opened the Sharingan, stood up and prepared to struggle, but as soon as he opened the Sharingan, he found that his left eye's vision seemed to be much stronger than his right eye. Staring at Uchiha Itachi and observing, he actually had a feedback that could be learned. 3 Magatama. This feeling can only be explained by turning into 3 Magatama. The surge in pupil power made him full of confidence. Since he had already reached 3 Magatama, he was only 1 step away from the Mangekyo. He could not say that he had no power to fight back. The next second, the eyes of both sides collided, and the result of this contest of pupil power soon came out. Uchiha Gin, who was slumped on the ground, came to the Tsukimi space again, and he actually felt like he was home. This time he was not tied to the cross in the first time. The pupil power of both sides was still colliding in the Tsukimi space. Feeling the pupil power was fading, Uchiha Gin knew that he was defeated and could not break the situation. Although the final result was the same, he at least tried this time. Countless Uchiha Itachi stabbed the sharp knife into his wound again and again, and Uchiha Gin began another 72 hours of torture. 1 second later, Uchiha Gin, who was slumped on the ground, slowly got up. At this time, not only his left eye, but also his right eye with black flame successfully advanced to 3 Magatama. The backyard refreshes a random skill, illusion, Tsukimi, every day, and obtains Tsukimi fragments *5, Tsukimi fragments, 10/40, collect 40 pieces to synthesize the illusion Tsukimi, and the skill Mangekyo Sharingan can be learned. Seeing that he actually obtained 5 Tsukimi fragments this time, Uchiha Gin once again confirmed his guess. As long as you do your best to fight the NPC refreshed by the system function, even if you lose to the opponent in the end, the reward will be more than that given by directly playing badly. Focusing on humanization, with the settlement of the rewards, Uchiha Jin's body recovered as before, and the trauma caused by Tsukimi also disappeared. Goo goo goo. With a rumbling sound in his stomach, Uchiha Gin remembered that he had not eaten rice or water today, and he should make a meal to reward himself for his injured heart. On the other side in Uchiha Taijima's mansion, Uchiha Taijima was reading the family's records about the Uzumaki clan in the study. There is a Senju forest between the Uchiha and Uzumaki clans. Apart from the battles on the battlefield, the two clans have no other intersections. Flipping through the records of the battles with the Uzumaki clan that were circulated in the clan, Uchiha Taijima found a record in a corner. The content of the record roughly describes that in a melee, a clan member who awakened the Mangekyo Sharingan fought against a strong man of the Uzumaki clan, and was sealed in both eyes by the other party with a seal that overdrafted his vitality. This seal was not broken until his death, browsing this record carefully, Uchiha Taijima frowned and thought. Is it this kind of seal? But in the record, after the Uzumaki clan member performed this seal, his fiery red hair turned white in an instant, and he directly lost his ability to fight. In the end, he was even killed by the Uchiha clan member who sealed his eyes. Uchiha Gin only described the seal written by a bead, which should not have such a great power to break his seal. Then he thought of the slight contact that Uchiha Miao mentioned. Could it be that the sealing technique opened a hole in his seal? It happened that Uchiha In awakened his Sharingan again, and the opponent's pupil power just leaked out from the gap in the seal, eroding his seal bit by bit as time passed. The more he thought about it, the more reasonable it was. Uchiha Tiandao was a little troubled. His eyes had already performed a larger pupil technique, and it was still in the cooling period. If Uchiha In broke his seal before he cooled down, how should he face him when he recalled those things? Bang bang bang! A rapid knock on the door interrupted Uchiha Tiandao's thinking. Come in. Father, I have something to report. Uchiha Izuna, who was panting, was soaked all over as if he had just finished a marathon. What's the matter, Izuna? Uchiha Taijima is relatively gentle towards his children. Father, do you still remember that you asked me to pay attention to what my eldest brother is doing recently? Quan Na calmed down and said. Why, are there any clues about this matter? Uchiha Taijima asked curiously. Uchiha Madara is his future heir. If there are any mistakes now, they must be corrected in advance. I followed my eldest brother several times and found that he often went to the nearby river recently. Uchiha Izuna pursed her lips and continued. I found that my eldest brother was communicating with a strange child, and the two seemed to have become close friends. Is this happening? What is the identity of the other party? That when Uchiha Taijima heard that his beloved son was actually related to a foreigner, he immediately asked. I can't tell. I asked my eldest brother and he just said he didn't know. Uchiha Izuna said that she was very heartbroken that her most beloved brother actually protected an outsider. Well, next time Madara goes for an appointment, come to me immediately. Uchiha Taijima's eyes were moving, and there was a plan brewing in his heart. Sneeze. Uchiha Gin felt a sudden chill on his back after he had just finished cooking. It was strange that he could shiver in front of such a hot stove. After finishing the meal, Uchiha Gin remembered that there was another person at home, so he got up and went to the bedroom, preparing to wake up Senju Atama and let him know what the real god of cookery was. Senju Atama, who was sleeping soundly, had a strange sleeping posture. The quilt covering him had already been lifted off, leaving only a pair of underwear on his body, and the rest of his body was exposed to the air. It's February now, and although it doesn't snow in the fire country, the climate is still very cold. Uchiha Gin, who was afraid that the kid would catch a cold, pulled up the quilt rolled to one side with one hand, and shook Senju Atama, who was sleeping and dripping with tears, with the other hand, following his movements. Senju Atama, who had just fallen asleep, slowly woke up. Dimly, he saw a person sitting next to the bed. He lifted his quilt with one hand and put the other hand on himself. He gradually regained consciousness and suddenly woke up, looking in disbelief at the impatient Uchiha Gin beside his bed, and looking down at the unobstructed view of his upper body. Senju Atama let out the loudest scream since he was captured. Ah, there is something perverted. Uchiha Gin, whose eardrums were shaken by the sound, immediately put his hand on the other person's mouth, which resulted in an even more intense struggle. Feeling ashamed and angry, Senju Atama didn't care what was at hand. He picked up the things around him and threw them at him, but Uchiha Gin nimbly dodged them. Crack! Uchiha Gin, who didn't pay attention to what was passing by, heard a crisp sound. Turning around, he saw that the family photo he had placed beside his bed was thrown to the wall by Senju Atama, causing the frame glass to shatter. Senju Atama, who was frightened by the sound, also calmed down, pulled the quilt to wrap himself up, revealed his little head and said with a complicated expression. I didn't mean to. Chapter 39 Light and Silver Grandfather and Grandson. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Uchiha Gin, who was about to get angry, looked at the pitiful Senju Atama and felt that there was no need to get angry with a little kid. He squatted down and took out the family photo from the broken photo frame. the picture of the happy family of three made Uchiha Gin sigh. The original owner's childhood memory was vague and he didn't have a deep impression of his parents, but judging from the photo alone, the original owner's childhood should be very happy. So I hate war. Shaking his head, Uchiha Gin picked up the photo and prepared to get up, but found that there was another photo stuck in the photo frame. The original owner had no memory of this. Puzzled, Uchiha Gin took out the hidden photo and looked at it carefully. The photo showed two children, a boy and a girl, who were about 8 or 9 years old. The two stood on the left and right in front of an old man who looked very kind. The old man stroked the children's heads with both hands. From the happy expressions of the two children, it can be seen that the relationship between the three is very close. Uchiha Gin recognized the child on the left as the original owner, Uchiha Gin, but he had no impression of the girl. The girl had black hair down to her waist, fair skin, and wore a blue dress, with a shy blush. The old man had gray curly hair, a kind look, and his eyebrows and eyes were somewhat similar to Uchiha Gin. Looking at the photo in his hand, Uchiha Gin tried hard to search the original owner's memory, starting from the time when he could remember things, but still found no information about the two people in the photo. Flipping the photo, Uchiha Gin found two small words on the back of the photo. Silver, light. Silver should refer to the original owner, Uchiha Gin, so the light should be the girl in the photo. Uchiha. Light. Uchiha Gin, who guessed the girl's name, did not find any trace of this name in his mind. He frowned, and felt that the original owner's memory was very biased. Not only were his childhood memories vague, but the memories of the Uchiha clan tragedy 6 years ago were also fragmented. Could it be that the original owner suffered from selective amnesia? He would actively forget the memories that made him feel uncomfortable, so he lost the memories before and after his parents' sacrifice, as well as the memories of the clan tragedy. I'm sorry. Senju Atama curled up in the bed and saw Uchiha Jin's face changing after picking up the photo, and subconsciously thought that the other party was very angry. He could tell from Uchiha Jin's family that the other party's parents might have long passed away. Breaking the only family portrait undoubtedly deepened Uchiha Jin's sadness. Little boy, I have to go out for something. There is food outside. Uchiha Gin, who was eager to find the answer, didn't bother to deal with Senju Atama, the little boy, and hurried out after giving him a word of advice. Senju Atama, who did not suffer the just punishment of Uchiha Gin as he imagined, carefully poked his head out and saw that the other party actually left directly, which made him breathe a sigh of relief. He tiptoed out with a quilt wrapped in a blanket, looking at the steaming food left on the table, and an inexplicable emotion spread in his eyes. Uchiha Gin walked on the road, trying to recall a few people who were close to the original owner, wanting to learn about the original owner's childhood from them, but he suddenly found that he only had intersections with the Uchiha Taijima family in his memory, and some other clan members seemed to be casual acquaintances. He could say their names, but he had only a vague concept of his experience with them, which suddenly gave him goosebumps all over his body. He had already walked to the gathering place of the clan and looked back at the bustling crowd around him. Uchiha Gin was horrified to find that he seemed to know everyone here, but he just couldn't remember the details of what happened between this person and him, as if there was a cognition that he should know the people he wanted to know. That's all. This discovery made Uchiha Gin shudder, and the air around him seemed to be filled with lead, making his steps hang in the air and unable to step down. The original owner not only had memory loss, but also had a big problem with cognition. What is the source of all this? How can you be sure that what you see is true? How do you know that you are really yourself? Suddenly I remembered the 2 sentences the old jailer said before I was about to faint in the dungeon, which hinted at something. Taking a deep breath, calming down his restless heart, Uchiha Gin walked towards Uchiha Tian's mansion. In the eyes of the surrounding Uchiha clan members who rejected him, looking at the familiar door in front of him, Uchiha Gin knocked on the door without hesitation. After a while, a servant opened the door and saw that the person coming was Uchiha Gin. He let him in without asking too many questions. Walking on the creaking wooden floor, Uchiha Gin was thinking about how to start the conversation, but he ran into Azuna, who had just come out of Uchiha Taijima's room. Cousin, you haven't been to my house for a long time. Why did you think of coming here today? Since Uchiha Gin was defeated by Madara, he has never stepped into the Uchiha Taijima family once. The Uchiha Taijima family just felt that it was very embarrassing for the other party to be defeated by a child 10 years younger, so they chose to escape. I suddenly want to ask my uncle something. Uchiha Gin explained his purpose. After being unconscious during the day, I found that my pupil power seemed to have improved a little. After hearing Uchiha Jin's explanation, Uchiha Izuna didn't think much. He had his own mission now and had no extra thoughts to care about Uchiha Jin's affairs. He said hello and left in a hurry, relying on his memory. He came to Uchiha Taijima's door and knocked a few times. After a few seconds, Uchiha Taijima's cold voice came from the room. Who? Cousin, I have something to ask you. Uchiha Jin exited in response. Crunch. Following a few footsteps, the door was opened. Uchiha Taijima lost his stern expression outside and said with a warm face. It's Ain. I haven't been here for several years. I thought you had forgotten where I live. Entering Uchiha Taijima's study, the two sat opposite each other. Uchiha Taijima spoke first. Ain, you have just been discharged from the hospital and are not having a good rest at home. Why did you come to see me? Actually, I have something to ask my cousin. Uchiha Jin said straight to the point. About what? Hearing that the other party asked something, Uchiha Taijima frowned subconsciously. I just want to ask, apart from my parents and my cousin, what other relatives do I have? Recalling the old man who looked like him in the photo, Uchiha Jin asked after pondering for a while. Is this it? Unexpectedly, Uchiha Jin actually asked this question, which made Uchiha Taijima speechless for a while. Uchiha Taijima was lost in thought, while Uchiha Jin waited aside without disturbing him. Why do you ask? Without answering Uchiha Jin's question for the time being, Uchiha Taijima asked. I found a photo of an old man at home. It looks familiar, but I just don't recognize it, so I want to ask my cousin about you. After careful consideration, Uchiha Jin still told what he had discovered, but did not show the photo to the other party. Old man. A trace of imperceptible resentment flashed in Uchiha Taijima's eyes, and he said in a heavy tone. Actually, you still have a grandfather. Grandfather? Could it be that the old man in the photo is his grandfather? However, the relationship between your grandfather and your father is not good. They stopped contacting each other very early. Seeing Uchiha Jin's questioning look, Uchiha Taijima continued to explain. And your grandfather passed away 6 years ago. 6 years ago again. Uchiha Jin's heart skipped a beat, and Uchiha Taijima actually said that his grandfather had no contact with his family for a long time, so what was the explanation for that photo? The original owner obviously had a lot of interactions with his grandfather. Then can I ask how my grandfather died? Uchiha Jin tried to find more clues. Uchiha Taijima's face darkened, and a visible decadence emanated from his body, as if he remembered something sad, and his figure became rickety. He was killed on the night the tribe was attacked 6 years ago. Chapter 40 Uchiha Jin sneaks in secretly. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 40 Uchiha Jin's secret infiltration. Seeing Uchiha Taijima's sad expression, it didn't look like he was faking it. Uchiha Jin felt a trace of guilt for his act of uncovering scars. The tragedy 6 years ago caused Uchiha Taijima to lose his beloved wife and children. Letting him talk about it again would undoubtedly add salt to his wounds. I'm sorry, cousin, I shouldn't have. Uchiha Jin apologized quickly. It doesn't matter. It has been so many years and I have already let go. I am very relieved to see that you can survive it. Uchiha Taijima patted his shoulder encouragingly. Then I'll take my leave first. Uchiha Jin knew that he could not get any useful answers from Uchiha Taijima, so he immediately stood up and left. Wait. Uchiha Taijima stopped him. Cousin, do you have any other instructions? Uchiha Jin looked at him and asked. Recently, I may need you to accompany me on a mission. I will notify you in advance then. Uchiha Taijima said. Okay. Without asking about the content of the task, Uchiha Jin had similar plots in his memory. They were all tasks of negotiation or transaction, and there was no danger in being able to gain seniority. As soon as Uchiha Gin left, Uchiha Taijima's originally sad face suddenly changed into a cold and stern expression, as cold as frost. There are still traces of that guy. That old guy. Uchiha Yan's hands and feet are getting worse and worse. Uchiha Taijima said to himself. It seems like we can only let this guy In go and reunite with his family. The words he spoke were colder than his face. Uchiha Jin, who went straight home, did not talk to Senju Atama, but just lay on the sofa and fell asleep. Senju Atama looked at Uchiha Jin, who was lying on the sofa with his back to him, with a complicated expression in his eyes. He didn't come forward anymore and turned back to the bedroom. Uchiha Jin, who was lying on the sofa, slowly opened his eyes and thought about everything that happened today. In the morning, I met a strange old jailer in the dungeon. After some exchanges, he seemed to know what happened 6 years ago, and hinted that his abandoned dungeon held the truth about the whole thing. The malice he inadvertently felt at the medical point made him wary of Uchiha Taijima. His cousin was far from being as simple as he remembered. The photos found in the photo frame that Senju Atama broke led to 2 more strangers. One of them seems to be his grandfather, but after asking his cousin, he only got the answer that he and his grandfather did not know each other. But the photo cannot be faked, so it can prove that there is indeed something wrong with Uchiha Taijima. After sorting out these details, Uchiha Jin fell into a deep sleep. In the darkness, his left hand emitted a coquettish red light. Early the next morning, Uchiha Jin woke up. He had another strange dream last night. In the dream, he was playing with a girl when a group of people suddenly appeared. They came to the two of them, lowered their heads and said something. The girl, who heard what the other person said, knelt on the ground and cried bitterly. Then the group of people came up to him again and leaned down to say something. Although he didn't hear clearly, he vaguely saw that the leader was the young Uchiha Taijima. After hearing what he said, he fainted. Before he fainted, he saw a red full moon rising in the sky. A strange and familiar pattern gradually appeared on the full moon. After carefully considering the scene in the dream, since Uchiha Taijima appeared, it means that this is not just a pure imagination. These dreams are likely to be things that the original owner has experienced before. The figure of the girl in the dream overlaps with the girl in the photo yesterday. Uchiha Light. Putting aside the girl's matter for the moment, he was going to the dungeon to look for clues today. Walking in the corridor of the dungeon, the old jailer yesterday had given him enough hints that he must look for the abandoned dungeon. According to Uchiha Rashi, the once abandoned dungeon was between Dungeon 1 and Dungeon 2. He looked at the Y-shaped fork in front of him. The left leads to Dungeon number 1, and the right leads to Dungeon number 2, but the wall directly opposite has obvious traces of digging, indicating that there was once a passage here. Fumbling for the bulges on the wall, Uchiha Jin tried to find something like a mechanism that would allow him to open the wall in front of him, but he found nothing after searching. Just when he wanted to give up, he saw a round figure in the distance. It was the elder Uchiha Yen, with the cold Uchiha Luing standing next to him. Uchiha Jin, who did not dare to get too close, watched the conversation between the two from a distance, and quietly opened his Sharingan. As the Sharingan recorded the other party's lip language during the conversation between the two was also interpreted. Uchiha Yen, Luing, has that Sarutobi clan member been recruited? Uchiha Luing, Master Yen, give me a little more time, and I will torture out the answer you want without damaging his brain. Uchiha Yen, as soon as possible. If it doesn't work, forcefully interpret the memory. Uchiha Luing, however, that may lead to direct brain death. In case it hasn't been interpreted yet, Uchiha Yen, that is the last resort. Is the guy in cell 0 still at peace these days? Uchiha Luing, there is no abnormal movement. I am personally taking care of it. Please rest assured, Master Yen. Uchiha Yen, don't let him die. There are still many problems for him to solve. Uchiha Luing, yes, I will check it out later. After interpreting the conversation between the two, Uchiha Yen guessed that the dungeon number 0 that Uchiha Yen mentioned should be the abandoned dungeon. Unexpectedly, there were still living people inside, and it was guarded by Uchiha Luing himself. In this case, the difficulty of entering would be greatly increased. Since Uchiha Luing said that he would go to check later, then if he secretly followed him, wouldn't he be able to find the entrance to the abandoned dungeon? With an idea in mind, Uchiha-in began to follow Uchiha Luing from a distance. Given the opponent's strong strength, if he followed too closely and exposed himself, it would be difficult to explain, so he always hung behind Uchiha Luing from a distance. After tracking for a long time, he did not see the other party's intention to go to the abandoned dungeon. Instead, he stayed in a cell in the number 1 dungeon for a long time. Finally, after a long time, Uchiha Luing, with blood on his hands, came out of the cell and walked straight back to his own office. Seeing that he was about to lose Uchiha-in, after thinking for a while, he went forward and knocked on Uchiha Luing's door. As a result, there was no response for a long time. Uchiha-in, who noticed something was wrong, pushed the door open and entered. What he saw was a relatively large office, but the color tone was very gloomy, which made people feel very depressed. Looking around, he did not see Uchiha Luing's figure. Where did he go? Uchiha-in thought to himself, it seems that there is a secret passage in this house. Based on years of film and television experience, Uchiha-in came to this conclusion. Generally, the mechanism will be in a place like a bookshelf or a craft vase. Uchiha Luing's room is relatively simple. The only thing that is more conspicuous is a vase on his desk. As a vase, there is not even a flower inserted, which is very suspicious. Just as he was about to check, thanks to the senses blessed by the vortex bloodline, Uchiha-in sensed from a distance that Uchiha Luing's chakra was slowly approaching, but there was no place to hide in the office at this time. What to do? I broke into Uchiha Luing's office without permission. If I was caught by him, I would be in trouble. Sensing the other party's chakra only a few meters away from me, a shadow suddenly appeared on the wall of the office. Uchiha-in, who was ready to face the trial, suddenly found that his shadow began to ripple, and a familiar face appeared on his shadow. The next second, he felt his body sink, and he was actually eaten by his own shadow. Hearing the sound of the door lock turning, Uchiha-in didn't care about resisting. The second before Uchiha Luing pushed open the secret door, he quietly merged into his shadow. Uchiha Luing frowned and looked around when he pushed the door open. His keen senses made him feel that something was here, but he opened the Sharingan and scanned several times without finding anything abnormal. In the end, he had to give up and thought that he was too tired from the torture these days and had hallucinations. Chapter 41: The Fall of a Genius. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Uchiha Gin, who was pulled into the shadow by the old jailer, felt suffocated. The surroundings were as dark as ink, and his facial features had no sense of the outside world. A feeling of powerlessness followed. Trying to open the Sharingan, Uchiha Gin, with scarlet eyes, was surprised to find that he could actually offset the invasion of darkness around him by relying on his pupil power. As his pupil power increased, his senses were liberated, and he saw the old jailer standing opposite him. What is your purpose? Although he got help from the other party, Uchiha Gin, who was not sure whether the other party was an enemy or a friend, did not dare to be careless. I've been waiting for you. The old jailer's white eyes revealed a long-suppressed expectation. When you enter the number 0 dungeon and find the person waiting for you, you will know everything. The old jailer spoke without a beginning or an end. Before Uchiha Gin asked again, he felt his body lighten, and in the blink of an eye he returned to Uchiha Ryukichi's office. At this time, Uchiha Ryukichi had already left, and Uchiha Gin looked down at his calm reflection. Without much hesitation, he reached out to touch the vase on Uchiha Luing's desk. As the vase rotated, the bookshelf behind the desk flipped over, and a dark and deep secret passage appeared in front of Uchiha-in. It seems that this is the entrance to dungeon number 0. Uchiha-in is now in a dilemma. All the known clues point to this dungeon. Whether the mystery of the original owner's memory can be solved can only be found in the dungeon. Entering the secret door, there is a switch on the wall. Uchiha-in tried to turn it, and the secret door of the dungeon flipped back. It seems that this is the switch of the secret door. Taking a deep breath, Uchiha-in did not dare to close the Sharingan. He stared at the surroundings with a pair of scarlet eyes and vigilantly scanned the surroundings to guard against sudden dangers. The layout of dungeon number 0 is similar to several other dungeons. The dilapidated cells on both sides of the corridor have long been abandoned. A pungent musty smell made Uchiha-in frown. but since it was personally guarded by Uchiha Luiying, there must be unknown secrets hidden in it. As Uchiha Gin went deeper, mottled skeletons appeared in the cells on both sides. From the irregular bends of the skeletons' hands and feet, it can be seen that the prisoners here have been tortured extremely cruelly. Uchiha Gin did not find anything else except the corpses along the way, until he came to the last cell closed by an iron door. Looking at the seal composed of complex techniques on the door, Uchiha Gin knew he had found it. He knew nothing about the seal technique, and looked at the door in front of him worriedly. If he broke it with force, it would definitely be discovered by later people, but he didn't have the skill to pick the lock. Just when he was at a loss, the familiar voice of the old jailer came from the shadow behind him. He, I can take you in. Then I'll trouble you, senior. Turning his head and looking at the old jailer who smiled at him, Uchiha Gin did not refuse. Since the other party has been leading him to this place, he must want him to meet the people imprisoned in the dungeon. Besides, he was not an important figure in the clan, so there was no need for the old jailer to go to great lengths for a useless Uchiha with a very bad reputation. Hearing Uchiha Jin's answer without any hesitation, the old jailer seemed to have expected it, and then stretched out his chicken claw-like withered hands and pulled Uchiha Gin into the shadow again. The reflection without the body did not dissipate, but slowly seeped into the gap between the iron gates like a pool of ink, and soon squeezed in completely. Uchiha Gin, who had experienced the shadow once, did not feel too uncomfortable this time. He only felt that he passed through the iron gate into the cell with his eyes closed and opened. The environment in the cell was not as bad as Uchiha Gin imagined. The walls were clean and new, and there was a bookshelf. Simple furniture was available. It was more like a study room than a prison. There was a desk next to the bookshelf. A figure with his back to Uchiha was writing at the desk. When he heard someone move, the figure stopped writing and slowly stood up. You are finally here. The owner of the voice turned around, with gray curly hair and a face full of excitement. One of his eyes was as gray as the old jailer's, and his hunched body trembled slightly with excitement after seeing Uchiha Gin. Who are you? That the old man in front of him was exactly the same as the old man in the photo he found at home. Looking at the old man's familiar curly hair and similar appearance, Uchiha Gin vaguely guessed the other party's identity. Really, don't you remember? That the old man saw Uchiha Gin's strange expression, restrained his emotions, and his face was as he expected. My name is Uchiha Yao. The old man said a strange name from his mouth. I have a son named Uchiha Gin. Uchiha Gin, the father who died early in the original owner's memory. He recalled the gentleman in his memory, and the identity of the old man opposite was about to be revealed. Are you my grandfather? Uchiha Gin asked carefully. That's right, my great-grandson. Uchiha Yao nodded with satisfaction. Then why don't I have any impression of you? That the identity of the old man was exactly the same as his guess, and Uchiha Gin couldn't help asking without any doubt. This is a long story, but you have to remember. Uchiha Yao shook his head with a sigh, and then said something shocking. The culprit who caused all this is your uncle, Uchiha Taijima. Uchiha Gin has a headache, and the original owner remembers his cousin Uchiha Taijima who took great care of him. It was hard for him to accept that his grandfather would actually be accused of causing his memory loss. Looking at Uchiha Jin's incredulous expression, Uchiha Yao explained the whole story. More than 10 years ago, I was the head of the clan's research department, dedicated to developing the power of the clan's Sharingan. Just like that Uchiha Miao. Uchiha Gin couldn't help but interject, saying that his grandfather was actually the head of the research department, and now he could be considered a high-ranking disciple. Humph. Uchiha Miao, that coward. Uchiha Yao seemed to sneer at the current head of the research department. And the Uchiha Yen who imprisoned me, they are both my cousins. Unexpectedly, the two most prosperous elders in the Uchiha clan are both his relatives, but from Uchiha Yao's expression, it can be seen that he has a lot of conflicts with them. Let's not mention these two traitors. Uchiha Yao didn't bother to waste his time on these two people. It all started from the day my son died in battle. When Uchiha Yao mentioned his son, his tone seemed very sad. It can be said that dying for the family is a supreme honor, but for Uchiha Yao, this is a gift from a white-haired man to a black-haired man. which makes this old man who is nearly 70 years old even more stooped. Regarding Uchiha Jin's sacrifice, there was only a faint trace in Uchiha Jin's mind, as if most of it had been wiped away. No matter how much he tried to recall the details, he couldn't remember them, and the more he thought about it, the more his head hurt, as if he was being pricked with needles. My son Uchiha Jin was once the #1 genius in the clan and the most powerful contender for the position of clan leader. Uchiha Yao couldn't help but feel proud when he talked about his son. My father is actually the #1 genius. Uchiha's silver head almost shut down. The original owner had very few images of his father in his memory. He only remembered that his father was very gentle. He was obedient to his wife at home and cared for him. He was a top-model husband, but he did not have much impression of his strength. Your father opened his eyes at the age of 8 and became a 3 Magatama at the age of 12. He crushed many ninjas at the same time. He was a real genius. But Uchiha Yao continued. He didn't deserve to die. I thought he died on the battlefield and died for the honor of the family. Isn't it? Uchiha Jin asked with a frown. Warm reminder, the next many chapters will involve multiple narrative timelines. What the characters say may be true or false. It may seem a bit difficult. Generally speaking, it is to reveal the original owner's life experience. Novices can't control the writing style well. Please read it carefully. Please be patient. After I finish speaking, it will be the stage for the protagonist, Uchiha Jin. P.S. The original owner and the protagonist are two completely different people. The original owner is a person who traveled through time in the second chapter.